I stood there at the airport gate, my heart pounding as my daughter-in-law's words echoed through the terminal. "Stay out of our way. You didn't pay for this trip." What she didn't know was that I had paid for it. Every single penny, and my credit card was still attached to their booking. Past tense. Was. Hi everyone, my name is Carol Jensen, and I'm 68 years old. Before I tell you what happened next at that gate, and trust me, you'll want to hear this, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I have a story that still makes my hands shake when I think about it. This happened just 3 months ago, and I'm finally ready to talk about it. I need to take you back 6 months before that airport disaster to help you understand how we got there. My son Bradley is my only child. His father, my husband Tom, passed away from a heart attack 9 years ago. It was sudden, devastating, and it left Bradley and me leaning on each other through the grief. Tom had been a mechanical engineer, a good man who worked hard and saved harder. He left us comfortable, not wealthy, but comfortable. The life insurance, his pension, and our savings meant I could live without financial worry. Bradley met Amber 4 years ago at a tech conference in Austin. She worked in marketing for a startup, and from the very beginning I tried. I really tried to like her. She was pretty, polished, and knew exactly how to present herself. But there was something underneath that bothered me. A coldness in her eyes when she thought no one was watching, a calculation in how she spoke to people she considered beneath her. The first red flag came at their engagement party. I'd spent weeks planning it, hosting it at my home, cooking for 40 people. Amber arrived 2 hours late, walked past me without a word of thanks, and spent the evening taking photos for Instagram. When I gently mentioned that guests had been waiting, she looked at me like I was an insect and said, "Carol, people wait for important things." I told myself I was being oversensitive. Bradley loved her, and that's what mattered, right? They got married 2 years ago in an elaborate ceremony that cost $40,000. I contributed $15,000 without being asked because I wanted Bradley's day to be perfect. Amber's parents, who I later learned were drowning in debt, despite their expensive cars and designer clothes, contributed nothing. At the wedding, Amber's mother actually pulled me aside and said, "It's so generous of you to fund this. We always knew Bradley married well." I remember feeling confused. Bradley married well? He was the one with the stable job and savings. But I smiled and nodded because that's what you do, right? After the wedding, things got progressively worse. The weekly dinners we used to have, just Bradley and me, our special tradition since Tom died, became monthly, then every few months. Amber always had an excuse. She was tired. She had work. They had other plans. When they did come over, Amber spent the entire time on her phone, making snippy comments about my dated furniture or my simple cooking. "Carol, you know they have meal kits now, right? You don't have to cook everything from scratch like it's 1950, she'd say, laughing in that way that wasn't quite mean enough to call out, but definitely wasn't kind. Bradley would give me these apologetic looks, but never said anything. That hurt more than Amber's comments. My son, who used to defend me against playground bullies, now sat silent while his wife took small jabs at his mother. This past January, Bradley called me on a Tuesday evening. I remember because Tuesdays were my book club nights, and I almost didn't answer. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something," he said, and his voice had that excited quality it used to have when he was little and had good news. "What is it, honey?" "Amber and I have been so stressed with work. She's been putting in crazy hours, and I just wrapped up a massive project. We really need a vacation, but with the wedding debt we're still paying off and the new car payment..." He trailed off. Here it comes, I thought. "What are you thinking?" "There's this amazing resort in Cabo San Lucas, all-inclusive, right on the beach. It's exactly what we need to reconnect and recharge. But Mom, the cost, it's steep. Almost $8,000 for a week, including the flight." $8,000. I thought about the money sitting in my savings account, Tom's life insurance money that he'd left specifically for me to live life and be happy, as his letter had said. "I'll pay for it," I said. "Mom, no, I can't ask you to..." "You didn't ask, I'm offering." You're my son, and if this is what you need, then I want to do this for you." There was a long pause. Then, would you want to come with us?" My heart lifted. Despite everything with Amber, the idea of a vacation with my son, of watching him relax and smile the way he used to, was too good to pass up. "I would love that, Bradley. Are you sure Amber would be okay with it?" "I'll talk to her. Let me call you back." He called back 3 hours later. I could hear tension in his voice. "She's fine with it. She thinks it's a great idea," he said in a tone that suggested Amber thought it was anything but a great idea. But I convinced myself it would be okay. Maybe this trip would be our chance to bond. Maybe away from the stress of daily life, Amber and I could find common ground. I put the entire trip on my credit card. 3 first-class tickets, because Amber insisted we couldn't possibly fly economy for 6 hours. The all-inclusive resort, airport transfers, everything. The total came to just under $12,000. When I saw that number, I felt a pang of anxiety, but I pushed it down. This was for Bradley. This was what Tom would have wanted. The 6 weeks leading up to the trip should have been exciting. Instead, they became a series of small humiliations. Amber created a group chat called Cabo Squad with the 3 of us. Every message from her was a subtle reminder that I was the third wheel. Bradley and I are thinking of doing the couple's spa package. "Carol, there's a nice senior yoga class at 9 a.m. if you're interested." I was 68, not dead, but I bit my tongue. "We booked a sunset catamaran cruise. Carol, it might be too late in the evening for you, but Bradley and I are so excited for our romantic evening." When I mentioned wanting to try the resort's famous seafood restaurant, Amber responded, "That place is pretty upscale, Carol. Bradley and I have a reservation, but they probably have a more casual option that would be more your speed." My speed. As if wanting to eat nice food was somehow beyond my capabilities. Bradley occasionally sent me private messages. "Sorry about Amber, she's just stressed about work. She doesn't mean anything by it." But she did mean something by it. Every comment, every exclusion, every subtle dig was intentional. I've been around long enough to know the difference between someone who's stressed and someone who's cruel. The night before our flight, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was making a mistake. Tom's picture sat on my nightstand, and I found myself talking to it. "What do I do, Tom? Our boy has changed. Or maybe he hasn't changed. Maybe he's just lost." I almost canceled. I actually picked up my phone 3 times to text Bradley that I wasn't feeling well, that I couldn't make the trip. But each time, I thought about how much I missed my son, how maybe this trip could be the thing that reminded him who he used to be. So I packed my bag, set my alarm for 4 a.m., and told myself it would be fine. Our flight was at 7:30 a.m., which meant arriving at Denver International Airport by 5:30. I got there at 5:15, pulling my single carry-on suitcase behind me, wearing comfortable travel clothes, nice jeans, a lightweight sweater, and walking shoes. Bradley and Amber arrived at 5:35, and I could see them from across the terminal. Amber was wearing white linen pants, a designer crop top, and heels that clicked loudly on the airport floor. She had 3 pieces of Louis Vuitton luggage. Bradley, looking exhausted, was pulling 2 of them. "Morning, Mom," Bradley said, giving me a quick one-armed hug. "Carol," Amber said with a tight smile, "you're early." "I like to give myself plenty of time," I said, trying to keep my voice cheerful. "Of course you do," she replied, and I couldn't tell if it was a compliment or an insult. We checked our bags. Or rather, I checked mine while Bradley struggled with Amber's 3 suitcases. When the ticket agent told her she'd have to pay for the 3rd bag, Amber turned to me. "Carol, can you cover the bag fee, since you paid for the flights anyway?" It was $50. I paid it. At security, things got worse. Amber apparently hadn't flown in a while, despite all her talk about being sophisticated and well-traveled, because she had bottles of full-size perfume and lotion in her carry-on. "Ma'am, you'll need to throw these out or check this bag," the TSA agent said. Amber's face turned red. "Do you know how much that perfume costs? It's La Mer." "I don't care if it's liquid gold, ma'am. It's over 3 ounces." I watched as Amber threw what I can only describe as an adult tantrum, arguing with the TSA agent until Bradley finally convinced her to throw the items away. She stomped through the security scanner, grabbed her bags, and didn't speak to anyone for the next 20 minutes. We headed to our gate. I'd treated us all to the airline lounge access, another $200, thinking it would be a nice way to start the vacation. We could have breakfast, relax, maybe even have a mimosa and laugh about the security incident. In the lounge, I made myself a plate of fresh fruit and yogurt, got a coffee, and sat down at a table. Bradley and Amber were at the buffet. I watched as Amber piled her plate high with expensive items: smoked salmon, imported cheeses, pastries, then loaded another plate for what I assumed was second helpings later. They sat down at a different table, not near me, not next to me, a completely different table across the lounge. I sat there, holding my coffee, trying to understand if this was intentional or if they simply hadn't seen me. But then I watched Amber lean into Bradley, whisper something while looking directly at me and laugh. My cheeks burned. I was the joke, the burden, the elderly mother who'd paid $12,000 to be excluded and mocked. I forced myself to eat my fruit, though each bite felt like swallowing stones. Other travelers came and went. An elderly couple sat near me, sharing a newspaper and holding hands. They looked so comfortable together, so content. I felt a wave of loneliness so intense it almost took my breath away. Tom would never have let this happen. Tom would have stood up, walked over to Bradley, and said, "What the hell do you think you're doing? Treating your mother like this?" But Tom wasn't here, and Bradley was 32 years old, making his own choices. Terrible choices, but his choices nonetheless. After 40 minutes, they got up to leave the lounge. I quickly gathered my things and followed. Amber glanced back at me with an expression I can only describe as disdain. At the gate, I found 3 seats together and sat down in one of them. Bradley and Amber approached, and I smiled, gesturing to the seats next to me. Amber looked at the seats, looked at me, and said loudly, loud enough that people around us turned to look, "Bradley, let's sit over there. It's less crowded." It wasn't less crowded. In fact, they chose seats in a more congested area. They just didn't want to sit with me. I felt my eyes start to burn with tears, but I refused to cry. Not here. Not in front of all these people. Not in front of them. I pulled out my phone and pretended to read emails, but the words swam on the screen. My hands were shaking. I was hurt, yes, but underneath the hurt was something else starting to build: anger. The boarding announcement came. We'd like to begin boarding our first-class passengers and those needing extra time. I stood up. I'd earned this first-class seat with my money. I was going to board first like I was supposed to. I got in line behind a young couple. Bradley and Amber got in line behind me. Then it happened. "Excuse me," Amber said, her voice sharp. She actually put her hand on my shoulder and tried to move me aside. "We need to get through." I turned around. "We're all first class, Amber. We'll all board together." Her eyes narrowed. "Some of us have overhead bin space to worry about. You just have that tiny bag." "I'm not moving," I said quietly. "Oh my God, Carol." Amber's voice rose, and I could feel other passengers staring. "Why do you have to make everything difficult? We're trying to have a nice vacation, and you're already causing problems." "I'm not causing. You know what?" Amber cut me off, her face flushed with anger or maybe embarrassment. "Stay out of our way, Aunt. You didn't pay for this trip anyway. We're the ones who had to save for this. We're the ones who actually earned this vacation." The words hit me like a physical blow. The boarding area went silent. Even the gate agent stopped scanning tickets to watch. I opened my mouth. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell everyone in that terminal that I had paid for every penny of this trip. I wanted to show them my credit card statement to prove that this entitled, cruel woman was lying. Instead, I said nothing. I stepped aside and let them go ahead of me. As Bradley and Amber handed their boarding passes to the gate agent, I pulled out my phone. My hands were steadier now, steadier than they'd been all morning. The anger had crystallized into something cold and clear. I opened my credit card app, found the charge for the flights, found the charge for the resort. And here's the thing about making purchases. Even after tickets are issued, the payment still needs to clear. The authorization is there, but it can be contested within a certain time frame, and we were still within that time frame. I'd called the airline 2 days earlier just to understand how the booking worked. The customer service representative had explained that since all 3 tickets were on one reservation under my card, I was the primary account holder. I could make changes. I could even, if needed, remove my payment method, which would flag the reservation as unpaid. But why would anyone want to do that? The representative had asked, laughing. Just curious, I'd said. Now I knew exactly why. I watched Bradley and Amber disappear down the jetway. They were probably settling into their first-class seats right now, maybe ordering champagne, celebrating their escape from burdensome Carol. If you've ever been treated like you're invisible, if you've ever been disrespected by people you loved and sacrificed for, hit that subscribe button, because what happened next is something I never thought I'd have the courage to do. I opened the airline app, logged in, found our reservation. There was an option, Manage Payment Methods. I clicked it. My credit card information appeared, and below that, a small link, Remove Payment Method. My finger hovered over it. This was it. This was the nuclear option. If I did this, the reservation would be flagged as unpaid. When Bradley and Amber tried to board, their tickets would scan, but the system would show a payment issue. I thought about Tom. I thought about the 15 years we'd spent teaching Bradley about respect, kindness, and gratitude. I thought about the life insurance money Tom had left me, money he'd saved by bringing lunch to work every day, by driving old cars, by sacrificing so his family could be secure. Live life and be happy, his letter had said. Happy. Was I happy being treated like garbage by my own son and his wife? Was I happy letting them walk all over me while I paid for the privilege? I clicked Remove Payment Method. A confirmation message appeared. Are you sure? This action may affect active reservations. Yes, I was sure. I confirmed it. Then I did the same for the resort reservation. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now boarding all rows for Flight 1847 to Cabo San Lucas, the gate agent announced. I picked up my small carry-on and got in line. I boarded the plane and found my seat, 2A, the window seat. Bradley and Amber were in row 1, seats 1D and 1F. They didn't even turn around as I walked past. I settled into my seat, stowed my bag, and buckled in. The flight attendant came by with mimosas. I took one and sipped it slowly, feeling oddly calm. The plane filled up. The doors closed. We pushed back from the gate. As we taxied toward the runway, I saw Bradley get up and head to the bathroom. On his way back, he paused by my row. "Hey, Mom," he said quietly. "Sorry about earlier. Amber's just stressed." I looked at him, really looked at him. When had he become someone who apologized for his wife's cruelty instead of stopping it? "It's fine, Bradley," I said. He smiled, relieved. "It'll be a great trip, you'll see." "I'm sure it will," I said. He went back to his seat. I watched the runway lights blur past as we took off, and I felt nothing. No guilt, no regret, just a strange sense of peace. The flight was smooth. I ate my first-class meal, pan-seared salmon with asparagus. I watched a movie. I even dozed off for a bit. Up in row 1, I could occasionally hear Amber's laugh, sharp and frequent. She was probably telling Bradley about something funny she saw on Instagram, or complaining about someone at work, or planning all the activities they'd do without boring old Carol. When we landed in Cabo 5 hours later, I stayed in my seat and let them deplane first. No point rushing. I took my time walking through the terminal, past the colorful shops selling sombreros and tequila, past the families excitedly taking photos. The Cabo airport is beautiful, open air in places, warm and welcoming. I knew where the resort transfer desk was. I knew Bradley and Amber would go there to check in for our shuttle. I hung back, standing near a coffee shop, watching. I saw them at the desk, saw them showing their phones to the representative, saw the representative's smile fade as she typed something into her computer, saw her pick up a phone and make a call. This was taking longer than a normal check-in should take. Amber's body language changed. She straightened up, gestured more sharply. Bradley leaned over the desk, pointing at something on his phone. The representative shook her head, made another call. I walked closer, slowly, sipping a bottle of water I'd bought. "There must be a mistake," I heard Bradley saying. "We have a confirmation number. Look, right here." "Sir, I understand, but our system shows the reservation was canceled due to non-payment. The credit card authorization was removed." Amber's voice rose. "That's impossible. His mother paid for it. Carol paid for everything." "I'll need to speak with the card holder then," the representative said politely but firmly. "Is she with you?" They both turned around and saw me standing there, 10 feet away. The look on their faces, I'll remember it for the rest of my life. Confusion first, then realization, then shock. "Mom," Bradley said, "they're saying there's a problem with the reservation." I walked over calmly, taking another sip of water. "Is there?" The representative looked at me hopefully. "Are you Carol Jensen, the card holder for this reservation?" "I am," I said. "Mom, can you tell them there's been a mistake? Show them your card or something?" Bradley asked, his voice tight with worry. I looked at my son, then at Amber, whose face was starting to turn an interesting shade of red. "There's no mistake," I said clearly. "I removed my credit card from the booking." Silence. Complete silence except for the ambient noise of the airport. Announcements in Spanish and English, rolling luggage, distant conversations. "You... what?" Bradley whispered. "I removed my payment method for the flights and the resort about 30 minutes before we boarded the plane. Why would you—" He stopped, understanding washing over his face. Amber, however, exploded. "Are you kidding me? You psycho! You actually canceled our vacation? What is wrong with you?" "I didn't cancel it," I said calmly. "I just stopped paying for it. You said I didn't pay for the trip anyway, remember? You said you and Bradley saved for it, that you earned it. So I figured I'd let you handle it yourselves." "This is insane," Amber shrieked. "Bradley, she's insane! Do something!" The representative cleared her throat. "Ma'am, I need to ask you to lower your voice. If the reservation holder doesn't wish to continue with the booking, that's her right." "Bradley," Amber grabbed his arm. "Pay for it. Use your credit card." Bradley pulled out his phone, his hands shaking. I watched as he opened his banking app, watched as his face went pale. "Amber, we don't have $12,000. We have about $3,000 in checking, and that needs to cover rent, and then put it on a credit card. Our cards are maxed out from the wedding and your car, remember?" I'd known this. Of course I'd known this. Bradley had told me about their financial situation months ago, which is why I'd offered to pay in the first place. Amber turned to me, and her face was ugly with rage. "You bitter old woman, you miserable, pathetic, bitter old hag. You're just jealous because I have Bradley and you have nothing. Your husband is dead, you have no friends, and your son can't stand being around you. That's why we didn't want you on this trip in the first place." "Amber, stop," Bradley said weakly, but she wasn't done. "No, she needs to hear this. You're a burden, Carol. You've always been a burden. Bradley only spends time with you out of obligation. He doesn't want you there. I don't want you there. Nobody wants you anywhere." People were staring now. A small crowd had actually gathered, airport staff and travelers alike, watching this soap opera unfold, and I felt nothing. Her words, which should have devastated me, just bounced off, because I'd already decided I was done caring what Amber thought. What really hurt was that Bradley still hadn't truly defended me. "Are you finished?" I asked quietly. Amber opened her mouth to say more, but I held up my hand. "I'm going to speak now, and you're going to listen. 6 months ago, you two came to me asking for help with a vacation. I didn't offer at first. You asked. And I said yes because I love my son and because my late husband left me money specifically to live life and help the people I care about. I looked at Bradley. I paid almost $12,000 for this trip, first-class tickets for all three of us, a beautiful resort, everything. And in return, you've spent 6 weeks excluding me, mocking me, and treating me like an inconvenience. This morning, you sat apart from me in the lounge I paid for. You tried to push past me at boarding. And Amber, I turned to her, you announced to an entire airport that I didn't pay for this trip. I didn't mean, she started, but I wasn't done. So I decided to make your statement true. I stopped paying. The reservation is canceled, or unpaid, or whatever the technical term is. I don't really care. Mom, please, Bradley said, and his voice cracked. I'm sorry, we're sorry. Right, Amber? Amber said nothing, just glared at me with pure hatred. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. I'm going to take a taxi to a different resort. I already made a reservation at the Esperanza Resort. It's where your father and I always said we'd go if we came to Cabo. It costs about $3,000 for a week, and I'm going to enjoy every single minute of it, alone. I pulled my wallet out and extracted $200 in cash. I held it out to Bradley. This should cover a taxi back to the airport and maybe a meal. Your flight home isn't for a week, but I'm sure the airline can help you change it if you explain the situation. Or maybe Amber's parents, who apparently have so much money, can help you out. Bradley didn't take the money. He just stood there, tears actually forming in his eyes. Mom, I didn't know she was treating you so badly. I didn't see... You saw, I said, and my voice was harder than I'd ever heard it. You saw and you did nothing. You're 32 years old, Bradley. You're not a child. You made choices, and those choices have consequences. I set the money on the transfer desk counter. Then I turned to the representative, who looked like she'd just watched the best telenovela of her life. Could you call me a taxi to the Esperanza Resort, please? Of course, Senora, right away. I spent 7 days in paradise. The Esperanza Resort was everything I'd imagined. Elegant rooms with ocean views, incredible food, and staff who treated me like royalty. I went snorkeling. I got a massage. I read 3 books. I watched the sunset every night with a glass of wine. I also blocked Amber's number. She'd sent me approximately 40 texts in the first 2 days, ranging from apologetic to furious to pleading. I didn't read any of them. Bradley called once, the day after the airport. I let it go to voicemail. His message was 3 minutes of crying and apologizing. Mom, I'm so sorry. We're at a cheap hotel near the airport. Amber won't stop crying. I didn't realize how bad I let things get. Please call me back, please. I didn't call back. Not then. On my last day in Cabo, as I watched the sun set over the Pacific Ocean, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Free. Free from obligation. Free from making excuses for bad behavior. Free from accepting disrespect because I was afraid of losing my son. Because here's the truth. I'd already lost him. The boy who used to defend me on playgrounds, who used to call me every day just to chat, who used to say, I love you, Mom, without prompting. That boy was gone. And the man who'd replaced him had some serious decisions to make about the kind of person he wanted to be. When I got home to Denver, there were flowers on my doorstep. 24 roses with a card that said, Mom, I'm so sorry. Please let me explain. Love, Bradley. I brought them inside and put them in water, but I didn't call him. 3 days later, he showed up at my house. He looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, rumpled clothes. We sat on my porch, and he told me everything. How Amber had convinced him I was trying to control their lives. How she'd made him feel guilty every time he spent time with me. How he'd been so afraid of conflict that he'd chosen the path of least resistance, which meant siding with his wife and abandoning his mother. Where is Amber now? I asked. We're taking a break. She went to stay with her parents. I told her that what she did was unforgivable, and that I need time to think about whether I even want to stay married. I didn't feel triumphant hearing this. I just felt sad. Sad that it had come to this. Sad that my son had to learn this lesson the hard way. I don't know if I can forgive what happened, I told him honestly, but I'm willing to see if we can rebuild something. It won't be what we had before, but maybe it can be something real this time. He's been coming by once a week. We have coffee. We talk. It's awkward sometimes, but it's honest. He's in therapy now, working on boundaries and self-respect. As for me, I'm planning another trip. Maybe Italy, maybe Greece, maybe somewhere I've never even considered, because Tom was right. Life is for living, and I'm done shrinking myself to make room for people who don't appreciate me. That's my story. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. Leave a comment telling me where you're from, and remember, you teach people how to treat you. I just taught mine one hell of a lesson.